let's start diving into this book. There's a picture of me at an exhibit of my photographs from Mexico that I took or captured when I was in high school. There's a story about it in the book Create here. If you want to hear that whole story, you can grab this book. There's a lot of other stuff in there. But it's kind of an interesting story. When I was in high school, I really was getting tired of being in high school, and I felt like I was ready to dive out. And instead of quitting, I figured out that I almost had enough credits to graduate. I just needed one more social study class. And I talked my principal of the school into letting me go to Mexico for my final semester instead of going to the classroom. It was unbelievable. It was amazing. And I took my Rolleiflex, this camera right here, with lots of rolls of film, mostly black. In fact, they were all black and white through that Rolleiflex. Anyway, years later, I was approached by a gallery owner who loved the images and put on a show for me. And it was, up until that point, I'd actually never really shared a lot of these photographs with the world. And it was really interesting to see people, their feedback and, what resonated for them and their comments and questions and that sort of thing. It does fulfill something, because visualization means that you capture what you saw and felt at the time, what you saw and what you felt. It's not just visual. There's that emotional component that you want to get into your photographs. And that's when it really becomes art. Try to get that feeling and show it to other people so they get a window into your world. And that's really what it's all about. It's very, very powerful. Okay, so let's talk about some of the ways to get your work out there. Well, one of the first things you want to do is you want to visualize yourself as a photographer. Like, what is your brand? Who are you as a photographer? And a lot of people struggle with this. And I want to let you know that it's not the easiest thing in the world. Yes, you can do it in kind of a snap manner. Like, I want to become a great portrait photographer. Well, what does that mean? What is your brand exactly? What's different about you from everybody else? If we look at in that category, Annie Leibovitz, for instance, like, she created a brand. She was a fellow student of mine at the San Francisco Art Institute. She didn't have that brand. She created it because she went to work for the Rolling Stone magazine, which was just being born at the time, and went out with her camera and started photographing rock stars, and that became her brand. She became a celebrity portrait photographer. She developed that brand. She created it. It didn't just fall out of the sky. She had to think about it. Take somebody else like Bob Holmes, like his brand. He photographs many different genres, but really it's travel photography. Even though right now his biggest clients it's not travel magazines, it's wineries. But he uses that same eye that he had for travel photography and photographing wineries. So he's like giving you a window into, what does that winery look like behind the scenes? And, what do the workers look like? And what are the colors and the light? That's his window. Vermeer, our friend Vermeer, the painter, what was his brand? It was natural everyday life. And he showed us, the milkmaid woman, the girl with the pearl earring. These were people, everyday people that he captured in his paintings. Cartier-Bresson was capturing the moment. So each of these artists built their brand. And I want you guys to start thinking about that. If you haven't already, do this for me. You should have a notebook. I have lots of them. This is one of many notebooks. And in your notebook, just start sketching out, what is your brand? What is your, what's unique about your photography, and what do you want to be known for? Kind of go forward, like in 20 years from now, what would you like people to say about your photography? He is a great, landscape photographer. What kind of landscape photographer? What is it that's unique about your landscape photography? What is unique about your portraiture? Whatever it is, I want you to carve out your own niche. Don't try to be like somebody else. What's your unique position? Then you got to get your work out there. So there's a lot of ways to do that. And I'm not even going to talk about social media. It's in the book, but here's the deal. I consider social media, you've probably heard me say this, fast food photography. Why? Because everybody's scrolling through it like this. Click, 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 like, don't like, whatever. They see it for a millisecond. It's very, very, very transient, and it's a low order of sharing your work. So let's get out of the trap that, you've got to have millions of followers and millions of likes and, in order to share your work. It's just not so. It's just not so. Don't throw that out the window. You're just being, frankly, brainwashed into that because why? The social media companies want you to be creating content for them. Listen, I use this stuff too, but let's get real. Let's pull the curtain. Why do they want you to do this? You're making content for them that brings people to the site, that gets them to look at ads. It's that simple, folks. I mean, hello. So why don't you make content for yourself instead of the social media companies? Okay, I use social media too. So what, am I two-faced about it? No, I use it because it is one tiny way of getting your work out to the world. But I know that it's a very minor part of what it means to be a photographer or an artist. The best way is to share your work. I'm going to skip through all this stuff here. The best way to share your work is to make prints, which I talked to you about a moment ago. Get prints on your wall. You have an exhibition space. Unless you're living out of a knapsack, in which case you could have a book, and you should create a zine or a book and just put it in your backpack. I'm not knocking that. I've lived out of backpacks for years. I didn't have a home. I was backpacking around, and maybe I'd be on a friend's couch or whatever. So if you want to be mobile, create a zine. You don't maybe have walls that you can put stuff on. But if you have an apartment or any place, even if you're sharing it, make prints, put them on the wall. If you have a workspace, put them on the walls of your workspace. You can get prints made, as I already told you, through Bay Photo Lab. They're awesome. They will help you. And we might as well dive into what Chris Burkhart shared with us. It's how to make big prints. And he gives you a whole, here we go. He gives you a whole way to size your prints, to make sure that they're sharp, they're not fuzzy. So we're going to put that link in here. I want you guys to check it out. It's not a long tutorial, but very important. Getting your work ready. So when you do send it over to Bay Photo Lab, you're going to get the product that you want. And here's an example, his whole process going through this incredible photograph of his. I love this photograph. So that's important when you are sending your work off to a lab to know exactly what they want, so you get back what you envisioned. Remember, it's all starting with your vision. So you want to start with that vision and make sure it comes through the right way. And that's what you're going to do with this sizing guide. It'll really help you. Okay, so getting prints made, point number one. Do that, you guys. Get them framed. Framing does all sorts of things. It adds a layer. It puts a polished, finished look to your print. And it says, hey, I really finished this thing off. I'm not just tacking this to the wall. Don't let me see you tack your prints to the wall. Unless you're doing test prints, that's fine. And in art school, we used to do that because we were taking them down every week. But once you've decided what prints you want to make, get them framed. Now, that could be a floating frame, like Bay Photo has a lot of those. Those are cool. But, I like traditional frames. Traditional black and white frames where the frame is black, the mat is white. That's always a timeless look. You can do more and elaborate and fancy work. I have a framer that I work with that I love. You can find one in your own area. You can go to Bay Photo will actually frame them for you, which is really cool. Now let's talk about showing your work. You should, if you haven't done this, look for venues in your area, like in your own community. What are some of the venues where you could get your work out? There's libraries. They're always looking for stuff to display. They are. Okay. Look at your local library and see if they have walls that you could put stuff on. Coffee shops, coffee houses are looking for local artists. It helps them and it helps you. So you could go to the coffee house. If they are displaying artists, go talk to the owner and say, hey, I'm a photographer. Here's some of my photographs. If you remember from my book, don't bombard them with dozens of photographs. Take your 10 best, put them in a portfolio, let them look at it, and don't chatter at them while they're looking, by the way. Let them absorb this. And they go, oh, this is pretty cool. It's very interesting. Alternative, if you've created a zine, for instance, you can show them your zine. Let them look through it, though. And hopefully, if you've done your job well enough, they're going to say, okay, let's get you in here. My next opening is January. Can you have 10 prints ready to go on the wall in January? And then get busy and do it. You can sell the prints too. Always. You title them and then you put your price right on there and you will sell them, I guarantee, if you've done a good job. So that's one thing. Look at schools. Look at places you have a connection to. One of my first places, actually, the first place I ever exhibited any work was my grade school, when I was in the 7th and 8th grade. And it was thrilling. I got my first venue. And years later, when I kind of reinvented myself as a photographer, I actually went back, and that was my first showing of my work in the digital world. So places you have some kind of connection with are always good. Your schools, libraries, coffee shops, businesses. If you have a business that you frequent, maybe they have space on their wall. Look it over. If they don't have it, don't bother them. But if they have any kind of space, go ahead and ask them. And I give you detailed instructions in this book how you can do that. Once you get an exhibit, don't hesitate to promote it. Get it out to your local newspaper. Any way you can think of to get your work promoted. This is an example of mine in the San Francisco Chronicle. And it's actually really important. Do everything you can to make that showing. Like if they have an opening, oftentimes they will have a show opening. Okay, so there's things you can do. You can work with them to make that a success. Obviously, you want to invite all your friends, maybe have some refreshments, certainly have a sign-in log so that you can get people's name and email address so you can follow up with them. People don't always necessarily buy at those exhibits, but if you follow up with them, you might sell some more prints that way. You should definitely do that. Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.